Okay, in your book, Men on Strike, you write, quote, men today feel very much like Rand's characters in Atlas, shrugged, knowing that they can be exploited for their sense of duty,
Yep.
production, and just
Yep.
being male at any time. You argue that the trends of men avoiding fatherhood, marriage, withdrawing from the dating scene entirely, dropping out of college, or leaving the workforce isn't just a case of arrested development or Peter Pan syndrome, but rather irrational responses
Well,
to
you
a.
want men to be more responsible, but you're not giving them anything to be responsible for. Usually men will choose their freedom over responsibility unless they have to care for people that they love. And since men don't have family anymore, since men don't have property or ownership in America anymore, a lot of guys are choosing to quote unquote just be free instead of responsible for anything. You can't really blame them. America wants men to take on all of the responsibility of maintaining society and being willing to die in all the wars while offering them nothing and throwing them under the bus and saying that they're the reason for all of the problems any chance that they get. It's not really sustainable. So of course you're going to see men become less responsible or have Peter Pan syndrome because you're not giving them anything to be responsible for. And when they choose to have responsibility for something, you try to take away all of their authority. The woman can leverage the state in order to take away your children, your house, everything you've ever worked for. So if you have responsibility with no authority, who wants to sign up for a raw deal like that? So of course you're going to see more men become less responsible. They don't have people that they need to be responsible for. So they're just going to choose their own freedom.
Society in which they sense the deck is stacked against them. And I understand just now you let me know that you're working on a follow-up book to update this. So what are some examples of that?
Of men going on strike or, well, I think actually men, I think when I started my book in around 2012, a lot of the books were surrounding, they would be like Manning Up, Kay Hamowitz wrote a book, Manning Up, or they'd be like Save the Males, like Save the Whales or something. And they'd be talking about how men were they were these Peter Pan, they were under arrested development. This is why they didn't want to man up and go out with women and marry them and do all the things they were supposed to do. But the men I actually talked to, and I'm not, people say, I talk directly to men, and that's what the sort of new thing about Men on Strike was so many books look and they try to analyze the author's view. And I think what's so interesting is as a psychologist, I think you have to ask men what they think. So when
Yeah.
I'd say to
Yep.
men, like, what's your view? They'd say, well, why should I get married? If I get married, the woman is going to expect me to keep the house.
Exactly. Yep.
If I don't do the type of work she likes, she's going to get angry. But men, believe it or not, men are still expected. American society hasn't changed, and they have in terms of women, but in terms of men, our society expects. Pew Research did a study, and they found that currently 72% of Americans think that to be a good husband or partner, you must provide the majority of the breadwinning in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And they only
Yep.
feel this way about 32% of the women that
Yep.
they even need to provide anything. So men are expected to provide the resources and to participate fully in the children and the home. And if
Yep.
50% chance that their marriage will break up, they then
Have to
are left
forfeit
to
everything.
foot the bill for
And
whatever.
it's all based off the whims of a woman's happiness, which could just be anything any day. And if you're trying to perform anything or have any type of stability based on something as fleeting as happiness, you're never going to have any stability in any endeavor that's based on one person's happiness, especially when that one person gets all of the benefit from dropping out or opting out of it, especially because the thing is hard. Like, say if we had to row a boat across the Pacific Ocean and my partner, who I'm supposed to be rowing with, if they drop out, they still get the prize money, right? Of course, they're going to be more likely to drop out because they have all of the benefit and none of the risk. And that's what they want men to do. Even though they say 40% of women are breadwinners in America, or 40% of households in America are led by female breadwinners, men are still paying out 92% of all alimony, right? So where are all these breadwinners when it's time to pay the men alimony? You're not seeing it. And it's because family court is just so uneven and so unfair that a lot of guys are just choosing not to get involved. I looked at their MSNBC just did a recent Gallup poll about house chores. Let me read it to you guys because it's actually shocking. So, roles of men and women in U.S. households. Who is more likely to do each of the following? Laundry, 58% men, 13% women. Clean the house, 51% men, 9% women. Care for child on a daily basis, 50% men, 7% women. Grocery shop, 45% men, 18% women. Wash dishes, 42% men, 19% women. What is the point that I'm trying to make? Today's men, the modern men, are doing more domestic labor than ever while still being expected to carry all of the burdens that men of the past have been having to carry in terms of protecting and providing. Those are still expectations. Feminism was just a way for women to cop out of their duties and to throw their duties on men. Men are biting it. The modern man is doing more domestic labor than ever, and they're still getting divorced at higher rates than the past. Because it turns out if your marriage is based just off the whims of a woman's happiness, there is no stability there. Because even when you give her everything she claims that she wants, men are doing most of the domestic labor, they're still going to be leaving you at a higher rate. So guys are essentially suckers. Guys are doing more than ever and getting less than ever. So guys are pretty much suckers. They let women sucker them into believing that they should have no duties and that you should be responsible for everything as a man. And so, of course, you're going to be miserable.
Alimony, again, alimony is a little antiquated, but there's still the child support.
Yeah.
And I think that men feel like this is a really raw deal,
Yeah.
right? The kids are not seen as the man's, they're kind of seen as the woman's today. Years ago, the children were more seen as the man's, which you would say isn't fair, but is it any more fair that today we have coverture being that term that means that men used to hold the cards in marriage, but now women hold that coverture.
Right.
And I think men just feel that it's a really bad situation. And why would they invest in that, especially legally? And the thing I find interesting is I think the younger guys are starting to pick up on this and understand this
Absolutely.
a lot more. The other thing men are doing, when I wrote my book, they were talking about someday men would only be 40% of college students. Well, today they are.
We already here. Yep.
When I wrote my book, it was somewhere around, I think it was 45, 55, something like that in early, mid 2010 or so. But now we see 60% women going to college, 40% men.
Yep.
So fewer and fewer men are going to college. I don't know that they're going on strike as much as they're finding other avenues. You might say they're going galt and they're saying, you know what? I even have family members, they look at this and they're like, a lot of guys don't want to go to school to college because they see it as, they almost see it as a girl. It's almost like as a very feminized place that
Exactly.
doesn't want them. It's a hostile work.
It's not a place where you're actually getting a grasp on reality or getting an education. It's not a place where people value the education. They value the degrees more than they value the education, because the degrees to a lot of people, especially ladies nowadays, are a status symbol. Unfortunately, most men don't really care about status symbols like that, especially when you tell them that for this status symbol, you got to go $60,000 into debt and you're going to end up with a job that's not even in the field that you went to school for. A lot of dudes are going to start to recognize that as a raw deal. So anytime I look at the school statistic, I don't really, bat an eye. I think that's just guys starting to understand that the school system is mostly a scam. Women are still engaging in it because they see it as a status symbol and a way to prove that they're smart to the world. And most guys are just like, okay, yeah, we're done with that. They're not really giving us any value. All the companies, they still want 12 years experience, even though you got a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. So we might as well just go out into the workforce, get into trades where we can use our hands, or get into other avenues where we can start making money right away instead of going into all this debt for a career that ain't ever going to manifest. So
meant for them. And I think a lot of them are turning to the trades. I
Yeah,
have one
yep.
family member going into welding,
Yep.
who's 20. He decided not to go to college. I talk to men all the time who are going into other sorts of fields. A lot of men try to go into engineering or some field. I even have men that I've been interviewing recently who told me that they're not really going galt, but they look into their jobs. One guy works at a hospital and he's like, okay, I'm going to go try just to work with men because I'm so afraid that and then with a group of women, they might accuse me of something.
That's all it takes.
I'll just be seen as this bad guy. And so I think men are finding their own way, whether that you want to call it going galt or just a different lifestyle that takes them out of the mainstream of what people expect of them.
All right, I'm going to dip into some of these questions that we're getting over the transom here, though I still have a lot of questions. of my own. On Facebook, Zachary Wren asks, are there any common trends in childhood
I'm sorry, I
development?
want to say a little point about that too, because I'm recognizing also that there are a lot of guys that are starting to not want to be involved in the white collar lifestyle, because within that culture is a certain polite and passive aggressive culture that really does women well. And women have a lot of the power in the bureaucracy when it comes to, hiring and firing based on this polite, passive aggressive culture. And if you're not willing to engage in that polite, passive aggressive culture, you can easily be seen as the bad guy. So there are a lot of guys that have been gagged. They've had their jobs threatened. I even did a episode on the podcast where a guy was just basically telling it like it is, talking about the reality of the world today and the situations and the circumstances for men. He contacted me about a couple weeks later saying that he wanted me to pull the video because somebody was going to use it as evidence to try to get him fired from his white collar job. So men don't even have the luxury of being able to say whatever they actually feel when they're working in these white collar fields. And a lot of guys are just deciding it's not worth it. It's not worth it being miserable in a cage, in a box, in a cubicle, just typing on a keyboard all day. I want to be a man. I want to use my hands. I want to do things that make me sweat, that make me a little bit more active throughout the day. So I think a lot of guys are starting to go into those fields also because they don't want to be controlled by whatever is considered polite culture or PC culture, or whatever it may be in those white collar jobs.
When there's only one parent versus two. I think maybe this could go back to,
That's,
yeah,
men on, or the star
Identifying.
card.
Mhm.
Yes, I think what we see now is that most kids, particularly boys, grow up without a father. And there's an excellent book called The Boy Crisis, which is written by Warren Farrell.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's a great book looking at what happens when you just have, a mom in the house and there's no dad. And I think particularly what we're seeing with boys, and that may be the trend of what's happening today, boys go through their whole childhood now, and their development is such that boys, we don't realize, are much more sensitive to girls about their surroundings.
Yep.
And they do worse in school when families are broken up. If they don't have a dad in the home, they tend to turn to, more criminal activities. I think, and I'm not saying kids, but that they can be perfectly fine. I mean, that's the majority of kids, but I do think boys do suffer, they found, even more greatly than girls, and in different ways.
Yeah.
I think boys don't understand boundaries as well as they used to, and that may be why we see more and more boys acting out in certain ways, because a father teaches boundaries.
Yep.
And we have all this research.
And a father teaches respect for authority. A father teaches a boy to be more diplomatic because he learns that he can't use his aggression to get his way, because when his dad is in the room, his dad is bigger and stronger. So he has to learn to use his words and be more diplomatic. And if you look at like 80% of all rapists, they come from single mother households. If you look at like most of the murderers, people that are in prisons, they all come from single mother households. So if you wanted to solve that issue, you would have two-parent households. And this is a problem that we know exists. We have the data, we have the statistics that support us, but nobody cares. Because to deal with this issue, you'd have to deal with women in the workforce. You'd have to deal with feminism, and nobody wants to fight that fight anymore, because the floodgates have kind of already opened themselves. So they're kind of sacrificing the sanity of the kids and the foundation of the family in order to continue to promote this idea that feminism has worked, and it just has not, if we're just honest about the results that it's created for society. So out of negligence for wanting to deal with feminism, you're just seeing that the kids are suffering. The kids are suffering. And these people know this, but they're still going to be more likely to give custody to a mom, even if she can't afford a lifestyle for herself or the kid, and make the dad pay child support, because the states get 60% of every dollar that they collect in child support. So it's all rigged. The judges are paid. The lawyers are paid. Everybody's working in the family court system is paid, and nobody bats an eye, because it's men that are doing the suffering. And it's children, too. The children are also suffering, but nobody cares. They try to act like they care about the kids, but they know that a father is the most important aspect to a child's results in life. Yet they will still grant the mother custody of the children, knowing that the father is the most important aspect. Also, they'll be willing to lock the man up if he can't keep up with child support. And why would you do that if you know, if you're supposedly doing it for the child, why would you lock the father up if he's the most important aspect?
People want to look at it, the social science research, and say, oh, well, women could do just as good a job alone. But I think having two parents, even if it's two same-sex parents,
No,
that still
don't
is
agree.
a good thing.
Don't
I think
agree.
a child with two loving parents, I think that's always going to be a bit more positive.
Don't agree. like she said, guys are going on strike. We have no authority over anything, and we're supposed to be taking on all the responsibility in society. And so the only thing we can do is to just choose to not engage. Choose to prioritize ourselves. And that sucks to have to do, because everybody, wants the responsibility. People, everybody wants family. People do want family. But with these conditions, the only authority that men have today is to choose not to engage. And if you find a woman who's virtuous, you love her, obviously, this is something that you should pursue. You should pursue a relationship with her if you want children. Marriage is good for stability of families, regardless of what other people say about marriages, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't pursue marriage if you find a good, virtuous woman. I'm just saying that the cards are stacked so against you for being able to have any authority in keeping your family together that it's hard for a man with logic to want to engage with these levels and these statistics. And I think this stuff is done on purpose. Like I said, we have all the statistics that support our side of the argument, yet this stuff is still being pushed even though nobody wants this stuff, and it's horrible for the results of children. It's a huge burden on society. It's a huge burden on welfare programs. And it seems to be pushed. The women are going into positions of power. I think the women are easier to control with fear when they're in these positions of power. That's what I think the plot is a part of the plot. And they want men to feel powerless. They don't want men to have anything to fight for, because a man that has something to fight for is willing to fight for it. So they want men to be more docile and more and less responsible and all of these other things. And what we're seeing is just the crumbling of society because of this. But as a man, all you got to do is sit back. If you don't find any virtuous women, sit back, relax, keep stacking your money up, stay in shape, watch how everything unfolds, watch how the cookie crumbles, and time is your friend. Time is your friend. These systems, society as a whole, cannot stand without men. And men have to learn to value themselves more and understand how important we actually are to these systems. And I think a lot of guys are starting to do that, and that's why you see guys going on strike. Let me know in the comments below if this video was a W or L, and give me the HBO special as help brother out special. Hit the like and the subscribe button for more content. Till next time.